What oppressive heat. We'll surely have a thunder shower.
Yes? What makes you think so?
The bells sound like it. The flies bite so. The hens are crackling. I wanted to go fishing, but I couldn't find a single worm. Don't you ever feel nervous?
Well, yes.
But you look like as if expected a thunder shower.
Do I?
Well, as you start off on your travels again tomorrow, it is not to be wondered if you have the knapsack fever. Well, what's the news? Oh, here's the post. I have palpitation of the heart every time I open a letter. Nothing much but debts. Did you ever have any debts?
No.
Well, of course. You can't understand how it feels like to have unpaid bills come in. The rent owing, the landlord clamoring, and my wife in despair. And I, sitting up to my elbows in gold. Here is 6,000 crowns worth of gold I've dug up in 2 weeks. This bracelet alone would cost the 350 crowns I need. And with this, I should be able to make a brilliant career for myself. The first thing I should be doing is to have the drawings made and cuts of figures for my treatises. After that, I would print and then clear out. Why do you suppose I don't do this?
Must be because you were afraid of being found out.
Perhaps that too. But don't you think a man of my intelligence should be able to manage it so it wouldn't be found out? I would always go there to dig out there, alone. Would it be remarkable to put a little something in one's pockets?
Well, disposing of it, they say, is the dangerous part.
I should of course have the whole thing smelted. And then I should have cast them into ducats. Full weight, of course.
Of course.
That goes beyond it. If I were to make counterfeit money, it would be necessary to dig up the gold first. I should be able to put a brilliant defense for the thief, prove that this gold isn't Resnola's or no one's, that it got into the earth before they acquired any land rights. Even now, it belongs to no one but the first comer, as the owner had never acquired any land rights.
And you would not be able to do this if the thief had stolen through need, but rather of collector's mania, scientific interest, of the ambition to make a discovery.
You mean I wouldn't acquit someone who had stolen through need? No, that is the only instance the law does not pardon. That is a pretty simple theft.
And that you would not pardon?
Pardon? I could hardly pardon what the law does not. And I must confess that it would be hard for me to accuse a collector for taking up an antique that he did not have in his collection, that he dug up on someone else's property.
That is to say that vanity, ambition could get a pardon where need could not?
Yes, that's the way it is. Nevertheless, need should be the change that shouldn't be pardoned. But I can change that as little as I will change not to steal under any condition.
And you count it as a great virtue that you cannot steal?
I cannot do it. I can't help myself from doing it. You understand? Of course, that the idea of possess this gold is not lacking in me. Why don't I take it then? I cannot. It is an inability. And the lack is not a virtue. And there you are. How close it is. I think we'll have a thunder shower. Are you not afraid of thunder?
One should be careful.
You are a queer fellow. You've stuck here like a bomb 2 weeks ago and introduced yourself as a man who travels collecting insects from the little museum.
Oh, don't bother about me.
That's what you always say when I get tired of talking about myself and want to devote a little attention to you. Perhaps it was because you let me talk so much about myself that you won my sympathy. There was something so mellow about your whole personality. You were so considerate, a characteristic which can only the most cultivated can display. You were never too noisy when you came home late, never made any disturbance when you got up in the morning. You overlooked trifles, drew aside when ideas became conflicting. In a word, you were the perfect companion, but you were altogether too submissive, too negative, too quiet, not to reflect about it in the course of time. Oh, you can't see your back in the mirror? Front view. You look like a frank, fearless man who goes to meet his fate with open heart. But back view? I don't wish to be discourteous, but you look like as you carried a burden, as you were shrinking on a lash. When I see your suspenders on your white shirt, they look like a trading brand, a trademark on a packing box.
I believe I will suffocate if the shower does not clear soon.
It will come soon. Just be quiet. And the back of your neck, too, as if there's another head on it, and with the face looking into the tight than you. You're so terribly narrow between the ears that I sometimes wonder if you do not belong to another race. That one looked as if it struck at the sheriff's.
At the sheriff's?
Yes, it only looked so. Sit down now. Let's have a talk as you're off again tomorrow. When you're out in the fields and I try to recall you, an acquaintance comes to my mind. Someone who doesn't look like you, but whom you resemble nevertheless.
Who was that?
I used to have dinner at the same place for many years, and there at the lunch counter I met a little blonde man with pale, worried eyes. He had an extraordinary faculty of getting about in a crowded room without shoving or being shoved. He always looked as if he was happy to be among people, and whenever he ran into an acquaintance, he would fall into rapturous laughter, embrace him, and do the figure 8 around him, and carry on as if he hadn't met a human being for years. If anyone stepped on his toes, he would smile as if he were asking pardon for being in the way. For 2 years, I used to see him, and I used to amuse myself trying to figure out his business and character, but I never asked anyone who he was. I didn't want to know, as that would have put an end to my amusement. One day, I happened to read in the paper about a big forgery by a well-known civil official. After that, I found out that my indefinable acquaintance had been a companion of a forger's brother, and that his name was Strawman. And then I was informed that the aforementioned Strawman had been connected with the free library. But then he was a big police reporter of a big newspaper. When I asked the man if Strawman had ever been convicted, he answered neither yes nor no.
Well, was he ever convicted?
No, he has not been convicted.
You mean that was why keeping close to the police had such appeal to him, and why he was so afraid of bumping into people?
Yes.
Did you get to know him?
No, I didn't want to.
Would you have allowed yourself to get to know him if he had been convicted?
Yes, indeed. Sit still. Why can't you sit quietly?
When did you get such a liberal attitude towards people's conduct? Are you a Christian?
No, of course not. The Christians demand forgiveness, but I demand punishments for the restoration of balance. You, who have served time, ought to understand that.
How can you see it?
I've taught myself, but that's an art too. But we won't talk about that matter. I must think about my mother's affairs. Please be so kind to witness my signature, which I must leave at the bank at Malma when I go there with you tomorrow morning.
I don't intend to go by way of Malma.
No?
No.
But you can witness my signature nevertheless.
Oh, I never sign my name to papers.
Anymore! That's the 5th time that you have refused to write your name. The first time was on a postal receipt, and it was then that I began to observe you. And now I see that you have a horror of touching pen and ink. You haven't sent a letter since you have been here. Just one postal card, and that you wrote with a blue pencil. Furthermore, this is the 7th time that you have refused to go to Malmö. We have not gone since you have been here. Nevertheless, you came here from America just to see Malmö, and every morning you have walked southward 3.5 miles of the Windmill Hill just to see the roofs of Malmö. And when you stand at the right-hand window, though the 3rd window pane to the left, counting from the bottom up, you can see the turrets of the castle and the chimneys of the state prison.
Now you hate me.
No.
Yes, you do. You must.
No. See? Here's my hand. What dog's trick is that?
Pardon, but thou art the first to offer me his hand after knowing.
And now you're towing me. It alarms me that after you served your time, you do not feel honor retrieved. That you do not feel on equal footing. In fact, just as good as anyone. Will you tell me how it happened? Will you?
Yes, but you won't believe what I say. Though I will tell you, and you shall see that I was not a common criminal. You will be convinced that missteps are made, as one might say, involuntarily. As if they came of their own accord, blamelessly, without intention, spontaneously. Let me open the window a little, as I think the thunder shower has passed over.
Go ahead.
Well, you see, I was a student at Lund, and once I needed a loan. I had no dangerously large debts. My father had some means, not much. To be sure, I had sent away a note of hand to a man whom I wanted to have sign it as a second security. To be sure, however, I had sent away a note of hand to a man whom I wanted to have sign it as a second security. Contrary to all expectations, the note was returned to me with a refusal. I sat for a while, benumbed by the blow. To be sure, though, it wasn't a death sentence, as I easily could have gotten any number of men to act as security. But it was most disagreeable. As I sat there in my innocence, my gaze traveled to the signature that rested on the paper, which, had it been in the right spot, would have made my future. That signature was the most unusual calligraphy. You know how, as one sits thinking, one can blotter a whole page full of meaningless nonsense? I had the pen in my hand, like this, and before I knew what I was thinking, it began to write. Of course, I don't want to imply that there is anything mystical, spiritualistic about it, as I don't believe in such things. It was purely a thoughtless, mechanical action. And when I sat there and copied the beautiful autograph time after time, without, of course, any prospect of gain, I had acquired skill enough to reproduce the signature remarkably well. And then I forgot the whole thing. That night, my sleep was deep and heavy, and when I awakened, I had felt that I had been dreaming, though I could not recall the dream. However, it seemed as though the door to my dream had opened a little when I saw the writing table and the note in memory. And when I got up, I was driven to the table absolutely. All thought of risk, of consequence, had disappeared. There was no wavering. It was almost as if I were fulfilling a precious duty. And I wrote. What can such a thing be? Is it inspiration, hypnotic suggestion as it is called? Or could it be my uncivilized ego, the barbarian which does not recognize conventions but who emerged with his criminal will and his inability to calculate the consequences of his deeds? Tell me, what do you think about such a case?
To be honest, your story does not quite convince me. There are holes in it, but that may be clue to your not being able to remember the details. And I have read a book about criminal inspirations, but never mind. You have had your punishment. You have had character enough to admit your error. And you won't discuss it further.
Yes, we will discuss it, so that I can have complete consciousness of my unswerving honesty.
But haven't you?
No, I haven't.
Well, you see, that's what bothers me. Don't you suppose that each one of us has a skeleton in his closet? Well, there are people who continue to be children all their lives, so they cannot control their lawless desires. Whenever the opportunity comes, the criminal is ready. But I cannot understand why you do not feel innocent. As the child is considered irresponsible, the criminal should be considered too. It is strange, of course, but I'll regret it later. I've killed a man once, and I never had any scruples.
You did?
Yes, I did. There were no accusers, no witnesses, no suspicions. Here's how it happened. One Christmas, a friend of mine had just invited me for a few days hunting just outside of Uppsala. He sent an old drunken servant to meet me, who fell asleep in the coach box and drove past the gate front, which landed us in the ditch. The man had no relatives or any other connections who were dependable on him. He had lived out of his life with a period of vegetation, and soon that his place would be filled by someone who was needed more. While I, on the other hand, was indispensable to my family's happiness, my own happiness, and perhaps science too.
So that's the way you value human life?
In that instance, yes.
But the guilt, the restoration of balance?
I had no guilty feeling, as I had committed no crime. I had been given out blows as a kid, but it was only the ignorance on the effect on old people that caused the fatality.
Yes, but it is 2 years hard labor for homicide. Just as much for forgery.
You may believe I've thought of that too, and many nights have I dreamt that I would be in prison. It is as terrible as to be behind bolts and bars.
Yes, it is terrible. First they cut your hair so that if you did not look like a criminal before, you do afterward. And when you look in the mirror, you become convinced you really are a desperado.
It is the mask they pull off. That's not a bad idea.
First they cut down your rations so that every day, every hour, you feel a distinct difference between life and death. All life's functions are repressed. You feel yourself groveling, and your soul, which should be bettered and uplifted there, is put on a starvation cure, driven back 1,000 years in time. You are only allowed to read what was written for the barbarians of the migratory period. You are allowed to hear about nothing but that which can never come to pass in heaven. You are torn out of your environment, moved down out of your class. You come under those who come under you. You have visions of living in the Bronze Age, and you feel as though you are living as an animal, living in an animal's skin, living in a cage, and eating out of a trough.
That's quite rational. Anyone who behaves as he belonged to the Bronze Age ought to live in the historic costume.
You scoff. You who behave like a man of the Stone Age, and yet you are allowed to live in the Gold Age.
What do you mean by the last expression? The Gold Age?
Nothing at all.
That's a lie. You're too cowardly to state the whole thing.
The unpunished.
Do you allude to me?
Yes.
Have I committed any crime?
No. Haven't you?
An accident is not a crime.
So is it an accident to commit murder?
No. Not always. There is homicide, manslaughter, assault, resulting in death, with the subdivisions, with or without intent. However, now I am so afraid of you as you belonging to the most dangerous category of beings, the stupid.
Will you admit that I reason shrewdly and logically when I say this? You have met with an accident which might have brought you 2 years of hard labor. here stands a man who is also victim of an accident, an unconscious suggestion, and forced to suffer 2 years of hard labor. This man might wipe the stain he has unwittingly brought upon himself only through scientific achievement. But for the attainment of this, he must have money. Much money, and that immediately. Doesn't it seem to you that the other man, the unpunished one, would restore the balance of human relations if he were sentenced to a tolerable fine? Don't you think so?
Yes.
Well, then we understand each other. How much do you consider legitimate?
Legitimate? The law decreases that a man's life is worth at least 50 crowns. But as the deceased has no relatives, there is nothing said to be on that score.
You will not understand me? Then perhaps I must speak more plainly. It is to me that you are to pay the fine.
I never heard a homicide should pay a fine to a forger, and there is no accuser.
No? Yes, you have me.
Now things are beginning to clear up. How much do you ask to become an accomplice to the homicide?
6,000 crowns.
That's too much. Where am I to get at? I don't want to do that. I don't want to become a thief.
Don't pretend. Do you want me to believe you haven't dipped into that case before now?
To think that could make a big mistake. But that's the way it always been with the blind people. One is fond of gentle people, and then one believes so easily that he is liked. Just on thought that I have been a little watchful on those of who have been fond. So, you're fully convinced that I've helped myself from the case?
Yes, I'm sure of it.
And you will accuse me if you do not receive those 6,000 crowns?
Absolutely. You can't get out of it, so it's not worthwhile trying to do so.
Do you think I would give my father a thief for son, my wife a thief for husband, my children a thief for father, and my confreres a thief for comrade? That shall never happen. Now I must go to the sheriff and give myself up.
Oh, wait a moment.
What for?
I only thought that as I'm not needed, I wouldn't need to be present and could go.
You cannot. Sit at your place where you've been sitting, and we'll talk a little.
What's going to happen now?
I see in the mirror that you are a thief. A simple, common thief. Just now when you sat, I noticed my bookshelf that there was something wrong with it. But I couldn't make out as I wanted to listen to you and observe you. But since you have become my antagonist, my sight is a keener. I see that you've been there and read the forgery story on Bernheim's essay on hypnotic suggestion and returned the book upside down. So you stole that story too? In consequence of that, I consider that I have the right to conclude you have committed your crimes through need, or because you're addicted to your pleasures.
Through need, if you only knew.
If you knew in what need I've lived, but there's no time for that. To conclude, your served time is almost certain, but that was in America. And another thing, you have not served your sentence out here.
How can you say that?
Wait until the sheriff comes and you will know. Don't you see? When I first mentioned the sheriff and the connection to the thunderbolt, you wanted to run then too. When a man has been into that prison, he never wants to go to the Windmill Hill every day just to look at it, or put themselves into the window pane to conclude. You have served one sentence, not another, which is why you were so difficult to get at.
May I go now?
Yes, you may go now.
Do you hate me?
Yes. Would it be better if I pitied you?
Pity? Do you consider yourself better than I am?
Yes. Of course I am better.
I'm more intelligent than you are and far more worth to the Commonwealth.
You are pretty crafty, but not as crafty as I am. I stand to check myself, but nevertheless, the next move you make can also be checkmated.
Shall we have another bout? What evil do you intend to do now?
That is my secret.
May I look at you? You seem to be writing an anonymous letter to my wife, disclosing my secret.
Yes, and there is nothing you can do about it. You dare not have me imprisoned, and so you must let me go. And when I am gone, I can do as I please.
Ah, you devil! You made my Achilles heel! Will you force me to become a murderer?
You cannot become one, you timid creature.
Well, then, of course, there is a difference in people after all. You feel I wouldn't commit as much deeds as you, and that is your advantage. But if you think you would want me to deal with you as I did with the coachman,
You cannot do it. He who dare not take his salvation out of the case couldn't do it.
then you wouldn't believe I ever took from the case.
You are too cowardly. Just as you were cowardly when you didn't tell your wife she was married to a murderer.
You are a different kind of being from me, whether stronger or weaker. I do not know more criminal or not. That doesn't concern me. Because you have forged a man's signature instead of begging for it, you were so stupid as you have got stolen through my book. Did you realize I've read my books? You were so stupid as you have thought you could fool me into becoming a thief. You were so stupid as you had thought you had the restoration of having 2 thieves instead of 1. You were so stupid when you thought I had built the life of happiness without the laid the cornerstone securely. Go write your anonymous letter to my wife about her husband being a homicide, which she knew as my fiance. Do you give up now?
Can I go now?
Now you shall go. Immediately. Your things will follow you.